there's some amazing stuff that's coming through that I just need to share. So in part one, I talked about the comparison of the concept of purgatory with Catholic tradition, the Protestant tradition, which doesn't include purgatory, and the what's coming through from Spirit, that there is some type of period afterwards that we go through that they call life review. In this part two, what I want to do is cover the 8 kind of characteristics of that life review process. This comes from, admittedly, a very small sample size, but it's something I've been very personally involved with. And if it had just been my son, or it had just been my mother saying this, or a couple of my relatives, I might have been tempted to think, well, that's just their experience, not others. But a total of 8 people have come through, many of them my relatives, all different levels of my ancestry, and also some people I don't know. A friend that came through, had nothing to do with my family, and I've gotten to the point now where I ask these type of questions: what life review is like, what happens when we die. And the reason I'm sharing all this is because they are amazingly consistent in what they share in terms of information. So the first thing is, I'm just going to do it here, the 8 rules of, or 8 characteristics of what life review is like. So when we die, the process that's been explained to me has been that we're greeted with a single greeter. There's somebody that we know, love, trust, that comes to greet us when we die. Now, this is not necessarily fitted with my traditional understanding of what happens when we die. You know, where you die and it's suddenly you're with Jesus and all your relatives and friends, and you're partying in heaven, so to speak. This is quite different. There's a process that you have to go through. Everybody does it except for babies or little children that die without really having much life experience. But a single greeter meets you and takes you to the life review process, explaining to you what's going on. In every case, at least with the 8 people that I've talked to in Spirit, they've been greeted by a single greeter. So I'm just sharing with you what my experience has been. That single greeter takes them by the hand, takes you by the hand, orients you, explains the review process, and then gets you started. Second thing is that there is a universal type of life review process. I need to say here that I've heard different terms for this. So prior to yesterday, I kept hearing the term life review, life review. Yesterday, a different soul came through. I did not recognize him, nor did RM, my medium friend, but he described himself kind of as a gatekeeper of the life review process, and he called it life purification. That the specific person that we were trying to contact, or she was trying to contact, was not available because he was still in life purification. So that's a whole different step. He described it as a loving process, but the same thing as life review. And my son earlier had said life review is purgatory. But again, it's a mandatory step that you go through. Everybody undergoes it. It does not have a fixed timeline. Its duration is directly or proportional to the scope, complexity, and decisions of the earthly life we've led. Now, as I mentioned in part 1 of this podcast, this was a complete shock to me because I've been very dismissive and critical of the Catholic Church's explanation of what purgatory is, and I've been amazed and stunned at what these spirits are telling me. It very closely tracks with the concept of purgatory. So the first thing was the single greeter. Second thing is it's universal. Everybody goes through it, but it has variable time spans. Again, time does not work the same way in Spirit as it does here on Earth. I don't know how it works, but there is some sense of time or duration that you go through life review for. Here's another interesting thing. It is done, the life review is done from the perspective of the other person. So when you go through the decisions you made, and my son and some other people described it as you have to defend the decisions you made, the soul does not just look through its own eyes or your own eyes. The review forces you to experience the actions and words from the direct perspective of the other person that was involved. And you feel exactly what those other individuals experienced as a consequence of your own behavior. That, I think, can be very challenging. My son's described it as a challenging exercise. Every time he's come through to me, he apologizes. And I told him he doesn't need to do that. Stop. You don't need to apologize. Every time he does, his last couple of years of his life were very, very difficult for him and for us. So I think that he's experiencing remorse or the desire to apologize as a result of the life review when he sees and feels it from my perspective or from my wife's perspective. So that's the third thing. You see it through other people's eyes. The fourth thing is that it happens apparently in reverse chronological order. So it's kind of interesting that you see your life come up as starting right when you died, and you work backwards. This was someone that I didn't know who this particular spirit was. She came through RM, but she said she's in life review, and she took some time to explain it, matching all this other stuff I'm telling you. But she said it's done in reverse order. My son Matt didn't tell me that, but he did say they use it like a Viewmaster concept. So the Viewmaster thing is that it's he showed a picture of this red Viewmaster and how they click from one slide to another of different phases of your life. It must take some time in spirit to do this, because Matt is still in life review, and he's been gone now for 5 years. My grandfather's still in life review. He's been gone since 1981. Another person that RM knows has been gone for 4 or 5 years, and he's still in life review. So it varies for everybody, but it can be, as I understand it, very challenging to defend the actions based upon how you impacted other people. The other characteristic of this process is kind of an active moral accountability. It's done with love, but it's not a passive, detached observation or mere acknowledgement of your past. Your soul must actively and morally engage with the timeline, and you're required to defend your choices and justify the things you said or did. Again, I think that's pretty challenging. There is some isolation involved. This is another characteristic. You go through life review by yourself, with one exception, but you don't see anybody else. That the one person that greeted you takes you to the life review stage, and you start the life review. My son is going through life review with another person who died about the same time he did. So I kind of call that, someone's at the same stage, or a stage review peer. But there's a person named Kelly, and I describe this in my book. There's a person named Kelly that Matt is apparently going through life review with. And I don't know how that works, of course, but he's not by himself in his life review. But he did describe it as a singular process. So maybe when they review his decisions, he's by himself. I don't know. But for some reason, he has access to another soul, and that's Kelly. Generally, you have access to no other souls. You don't see anybody else until you finish life review. And that's number 7 in terms of the characteristics. So there is a communication barrier with the living, and you cannot communicate with any of the people here on Earth until you've reached a certain level of life review. That's kind of a different thing that I hadn't heard before, but Matt explained that. My father explained that. A couple people said the exact same thing, that you only get to come through and talk to people on Earth once you reach a specific level of life review. Now, when I was going through, I write this in my book, when I was going through my experiences with mediums, shortly after my son died, many of them told me, do not come and ask for a medium, do not try to see a medium until your loved one's been gone for at least 4 months to 6 months. I never knew why. No one ever explained that to me. I don't think mediums really know why. All they know is that someone who's looking for a loved one and misses that person very dearly and wants some type of response or verification that they're okay, they try to get to a medium as soon as possible, and then they go 1 month after that person's dead or 2 weeks after that person's dead, and they get nothing. There's no contact with their departed loved one. And that leads to a lot of sorrow and misunderstanding and heartache, whereas the explanation might be, as it's coming to me through spirit, is that you're in life review, and the first part of that, whatever stage you need to get to come and talk to people on Earth, you've got to reach that stage before you can come back. As an example, my son Matt now can do that, right? He was able to come through to us after about 6 months, and he comes through a lot now. But my grandfather on my paternal side, my maternal grandfather, he cannot contact anybody yet here on Earth. My grandmother told me that. She's come through a couple times, and I asked her, where's Grandpa, her husband? And she said he's in life review. He can't contact anybody. So that was really interesting. You also can't contact any of your loved ones in spirit, or all the loved ones that are already in heaven. They don't call it heaven, but the people that have already died, you can't contact them either. So Matt, for example, told me he has not seen my father. He has not seen anybody but my mother, who was his greeter. He's not seen any other souls in our family. He has not yet met Jesus Christ. That's another biggie, right? Or souls repeatedly that are in life review, I ask them now, RM asks them, have they met Jesus Christ? And the answer is always no. They have not. Again, just a small sample size. I know this directly contradicts what a lot of people believe. I wish it was different, but I'm just reporting to you what I'm finding and what I'm hearing. And people don't see Jesus until they go through this life purification process. Call it whatever you want. I know the Catholic Church calls it purgatory. Call it whatever you want, but they don't see Jesus till that's done. And then the final thing is that the life review process appears to be administered by a divine authority. So it's not self-administered. It's not governed by a soul's peer group. The ultimate authority over staging it, conducting it, appears to be macro-managed from God. Numerous family contacts, I've asked them, who does life review? Is it some group of souls or some group of wise masters or whatever? Because I've read other books where it's a panel of wise masters that does this. The contacts that I've talked with about or questioned about this said that God runs life review. Now, is this judgment? God's judgment? I don't know. Doesn't appear to be. This seems to be a loving process that everybody goes through. Do the worst people that are here on Earth go through the same process? I don't know. All the people that I've talked to or been privileged to contact in spirit are normal, loving people. They're not mass murderers. So their life reviews are still challenging for them and still take time. So those are the 8 characteristics of what life review is like. Let me just review them real quick because I know I went off the track here a little bit. So everybody goes through it, and it has different time frames for everybody. That's 1. It's done in reverse chronological order. That's 2. You experience some type of isolation. You're isolated from everybody, including other souls that have passed before you, and Jesus and all the divinity people. You don't see them. It's an act of moral accountability. You've got to defend your choices. That's 4. You see it through the experiential perspective of the other person that you impacted. It's 5. There's a single greeter that greets you. Is 6. You have a communication barrier or level to attain before you can talk to somebody on Earth. That's 7. And 8 is there's a divine authority that actually conducts the review for you.